What's up, you guys? Michael Gideon here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about why I have lost faith in the 912. This is my 72 911. I've got this 912. I have a 73 911 Targa as well. And yeah, I've had some other Porsches in the past. But I fully restored this car. You know, it was sitting for 43 years, and I've got some videos here on the channel of doing that. I'm going to do some new videos that I have been wanting to do for a while, where I kind of recap that whole thing. There's all kinds of footage that I've never shared with you guys, so I think that would be pretty fun. And at this stage, I have gotten the opportunity to drive this on several road trips. I just got back from about a 500, 600 mile. In fact, let me see how many miles I did, because I reset the, okay, 520 miles. I just did through Joshua Tree National Park, well, up in that area. I live on the coast of Southern California, so, you know, cooler temperature here, but the reason I'm doing this video is because of the last trip that I did, and I've also done, you know, a couple other road trips. I think the longest road trip I've done in the car is probably, what did I do, I think I did about 1,000 miles or maybe 1,200 miles on a road trip with some friends last year. And I've driven it as a daily driver for some time. You know, I've probably got in total, I don't know, I probably have between like 50 and 75,000 miles driven in air-cooled Porsches. So, you know, this video is based on my opinion. Of course, you guys are entitled to your own as well. I have nothing to gain here by sharing this information other than, you know, just to provide some content for some of you guys, and hopefully, you know, shed a little bit of light on what it's like to own a 911 versus a 912, and you know, thoughts from somebody who has, you know, experience like I do with the cars. Let me also say, I am not selling this car. This isn't a car that I'm about to, you know, get rid of to buy something else. These are both cars that I plan on keeping, you know, as long as I'm able to. So unless something crazy happens in life, I'm not getting rid of them. With that being said, I'm still going to be honest, and I'm going to share some negativity about the 912 that I've come to find. And some of you 912 guys aren't going to like it. Sorry, you know, I'm still a fan of these, but yeah. So I have basically lost faith in the 912 engine. That is where I'm at. I'm obsessed with the feel of the car. It is so much lighter than a 911, and the way that the car turns in is fantastic. I love that. I love the way it drives, you know, in a canyon, flat or downhill. On a hill climb, it is, you know, they're really a dog. And obviously, you know, I'm speaking about my car. You know, you can soup these up and do this, that, and the other. When this motor was rebuilt, I just wanted it to be stock. You know, I already have a 911, so I didn't want to sacrifice any kind of, you know, reliability. I just wanted it to be stock. So it's a 1600, and it does have like a little mild cam in it, but you know, generally, it's basically just a stock car. I did drive. I'm not going to name any names, but I drove a friend's car who has a motor that's built by, you know, a reputable shop that a lot of you guys would know, and there wasn't a big difference. You know, I mean, it was like, you know, and not to say that some of these high-end 912 shops that you guys are going to know offhand can't build amazing engines. I'm sure that they can. I'm sure that they're all different. So I certainly don't want to say anything negative about, like, you know, shops or the capability of a 912. This is all coming from my experience. But I did drive, you know, one of these kind of built flat four motors in a friend's car, and I was kind of like, yeah, it's got a little more power. It's really not, it's, you know, they're not fast cars, you know, but yeah, okay, we'll talk about more of that probably in a different video. But I don't think that this, you know, let me also preface this with saying that I'm not a guy that just drives to Cars and Coffee. I'll share some more videos with you guys in the future on things that I've done, and probably some of you know that, you know, I pretty much, I'll drive these down dirt roads, and I like to drive them on you know, long trips, and not that I'm abusing the cars, but I'm using them pretty hard. So, you know, this isn't, my opinion is not going to really land for somebody who is 70 years old and just wants to cruise it down the beach. If that's what you want to do, pretty much, you know, turn this video off. You know, I like to drive the car pretty hard. So, and I think that, you know, one of the best things about the 912 is, like, you've got your foot into it all the time. You hardly need to use the brakes. Obviously, when you're going downhill, you know, you're kind of using the brakes, but that is the beauty of these, you know, is that you get to use, like, the whole car all of the time. And when the timing, you know, I recently just did the timing on this, and well, I adjusted the valves, timed it, got it running really, really nice here at sea level. And I experienced, when I got up, I didn't realize that Joshua Tree was parts of the park are actually 4,500 feet or so. The car ran terrible. And I know what some of you guys are thinking, well, that's carburetors. Well, this car's carbureted, and I drive it up and down the mountains. I've done all of it, and I've never been like, oh, wow, you know, maybe it's running a tad bit, you know, different than it is here at sea level. But essentially, I have had, you know, lots of problems with just kind of the adjusting the valves. They get you know, kind of out of adjustment on a 912 much quicker and easier than a 911. The pushrod engine, it's just, I don't love it. I love the car. I love the way the thing drives, but essentially, I think that there's, for what I like to do and really, you know, push a car hard in different conditions and all of that, there's no denying that a 911, you know, it's an overhead cam design. It's just a way more robust engine that can handle abuse and, you know, and all of that. So, you know, it was a frustrating drive. I actually, when I did, what was it, about 200 miles out to the desert, you know, and it's a hill climb on the way back, or excuse me, on the way up there. The car drove awesome in the evening time when the weather was cool, and I was kind of humming down the road, you know, and I was thinking, man, I've been driving this car a lot. I was like, man, I don't know, is there something going on here? I can't remember the car being this slow. I haven't been driving this as much. But I think that is just kind of how they are, you know. So I was able to flow with traffic, and at certain times, you know, I was doing 70 miles an hour or whatever. But, you know, at 3,700 RPMs, this thing's doing like 60 to 65 miles an hour. 4,000 RPMs, I'm doing maybe a little over 4,200. I'm doing closer to like 70. And it is a 4-speed. So all these things can be changed, and this, that, and the other. I'm basically just giving, obviously, my experience with this car. And fourth and fifth in these are the same. So if you've got a fifth, unless you have some work done to it, it doesn't matter. Those gears are the same. The car drove fine when I was, you know, until it started creeping up in elevation, and also it was really hot. So that 100-degree heat, I was like, the car was just not running right. It just did not want to run right. And I was wondering, I'm like, you know, is this mechanical fuel pump not pumping right? Do I have I was, of course, expecting some issues with the elevation, but not that much. I was wondering, I'm thinking, is my coil having a problem? I had a spare coil. Is this coil getting too hot? And all these different things were running through my mind. You know, I just had problems on the drive. And there was another time that I drove this on a road trip, and I definitely felt the car kind of, you know, falling on its face as I got at up to higher elevation, but not as bad as this trip, you know. And it was pretty frustrating to deal with. I was like, man, I went into Joshua National Tree Park, and I was there for a photo shoot and stuff, and I couldn't make it up this hill. And I was like, I'm either gonna sit here and advance the timing, you know, because now the air is really thin, or what else? I'm like, I'm not gonna sit. I mean, I could have sat there and adjusted the the air fuel mixture in the carburetors. But it was the way that this group was moving, and there was like a plan and kind of a mission of accomplishing these certain areas up in the park. There wasn't really time for me to sit there and go through all this stuff. So at some point, I actually just had to leave the group and turn around because it was like almost 5,000 feet of elevation. The car just would not run anymore. And at that point, I was like, man, you know, I didn't realize I was at 5,000 feet. I just thought, I was just sitting there thinking, I think this motor just, you know, it's a rebuilt motor. It's not like the thing's got, you know, it has compression. It's not like the motor's bad. But I was thinking, I don't believe in this pushrod engine, man. I just don't. I just think that the design is bogus, you know, or whatever it is. I admittedly am not an engine builder. I'm not a, you know, I'm a little bit mechanically inclined. So some of you guys can, you know, I welcome you to educate me in the comments. Go ahead. But my experience with these cars have been that I don't deal with any of that. It's just fire the key up and I'm off, especially with my Carrera that had Motronic injection. Of course, that never had any problem at altitude. I've experienced this thing getting a little bit hot a couple of times. And, you know, maybe the, you know, the float bowls are getting a little bit dry, but not really. I mean, I've never had, you know, compared to this in this last trip, I've never had anything even close. I mean, this thing has just been always, you know, and of course, I can fly down the free, you know, this car will do 150 miles an hour, you know, probably more. So yeah, you've got the fact that these are not, they're really not fast. I think there's all kinds of work that needs to be done. And in a future video, you know, I think I'll talk about this a little bit more. What happens to, and not that I know, but I'll probably do a little bit of learning and kind of share some potential knowledge or questions with you guys. What happens when you turn one of these into a, you know, 1.9 liter? How long does it last? Because that's another thing that I think would, you know, if I was shopping for one of these, you know, or if I was just going to have one car, I would want to know that. You know, okay, if the 1600 is maybe not as, you know, not as powerful as I'd like it to be, but I want that lightweight experience, can a 1.9 liter last 100,000 miles? You know, and truthfully, I don't know, but my assumption is that it's not going to do very good. I don't think, I generally do not believe that the engine design is, I'm sure it would be a hell of a time. It's gonna be light and punchy and fun to drive, but I just can't imagine that one of these with a, you know, when you really build one of them, that it's gonna do a bunch of miles. I could be wrong, I don't know. Maybe I'll eat my words one of these days. But even the guys that have these cars that I've known, you know, it's like, oh man, they're the best, they're great, they're awesome. And then the more questions I asked, I'm not gonna name any names, I could though, they're like, I find out they're rebuilding their motor like every year because it's fun to them and they're that type of guy, which I totally respect and more power to them. I don't wanna rebuild a motor every year or year and a half or whatever. And there's been a number of guys that I've known that reputable shops have built them motors and had to redo it again and redo it again. Whereas my personal experience and some communication with friends that own these 911s, that has not been the case. Of course, there are issues if you know, if you talk to enough people or whatever, you're gonna find the guy that had to have his motor rebuilt or had a problem or whatever. But generally, when these are rebuilt, if they're done right, you're pretty much good to go. It was a frustrating trip, man. It really was. You know, I think for whatever reason, like even the timing, when, you know, Tyson Schmidt built the motor on this. The previous owner built the motor on my Targa. When I fire these things up, I have never a single time had to deal with the timing. I've probably gotten triple the mileage, maybe even more than that out of these cars. With, you know, let's call it, I think I've driven this car probably 3,000 to 5,000 miles now, and I have adjusted the timing. It's like the timing goes out on its own. You know, it's like I'll time it right and start driving the car a little bit. Like, you know, these are due for valve adjustments a lot more frequently than these are. Like every oil change, like 2,500, 3,000 miles. These are more like 12 to 15,000 miles for valve adjustments. But yeah, I mean, I've just had to deal with the timing, wondering about the carburetors, what's going on, because you're trying to get as much power as you can, because especially with a 1600 like this, you know, it's, you want every bit that you can get. When it's running, when it's not timed right, and when the valves are out of adjustment, you know it. I mean, it's like, yeah, so anyways, I could go on and on. I don't want this video to be too long, but I appreciate you guys watching this. I still love this car. I'm not selling it. I do have a plan, I think, that I'll share in a future video on what could make this car really awesome. I don't want to turn it into a 911, but I'll tell you this much. I have thought about it, because I'm like, this, I don't want, you know, I know a lot of people are going to say, you know, and I probably will not put a 911 motor in this, but there's a lot of people that will say, it's not a 911, don't make it a 911. And I agree, and I appreciate that. But at the same time, I think these engines kind of suck. I think they kind of suck. I have a plan. Maybe it'll work out, and this thing will really rip and still be a 4-cylinder that'll be more reliable. I'll share that with you guys later. But for now, yeah. Gosh, they are so fun to drive though, man. I'm telling you, the steering, you know, the guys that have 911s that think that these, you know, it's a different thing, but owning both of them, the steering and the way that this car feels is totally epic. I mean, I really, really appreciate it. So, but yeah, I want to go good, and I don't want to go too fast, but I want to go faster. All right, you guys, we will see you on the next one. Thanks for watching.